As Fractal, you help companies take right decisions. Can you double click on the learnings that you have had?
We all feel like we are a thinking machine that makes rational choices. And reality, it turns out, is that we are all making emotional decisions.
Let's say that you have no capital, no network, but you have all the knowledge.
The first thing to do is to know yourself. If I'm working 70 hours a week, it better be fun because you can't sacrifice your life for anything.
Tell us the art of decision making, how to take right decision.
It's something that I've learned from Jeff Bezos. What decision will I regret more? I could be in this meeting in this office right now, or I have my daughter's performance in school 2 years from now. What will I regret more? I don't even remember what this meeting was about a year from now.
There are a lot of companies which have a lot of data. How do you figure out we'll charge this much amount for it?
Sometimes when we take risks, we want to generate at least $1 billion of value for every client that we serve. There are situations where we have been very clear that we will not serve this client.
What are things that you're actually doing today at Fractal which can help Fractal, maybe 100 years from now?
Today, somebody that we are hiring from campus, 15 years from now, could be our next CEO. We attract 315,000 applications every year. Of that, we hire 1,500 people.
What are some cues that a person gives which makes you believe that he or she is a potential leader?
I tell everyone that please don't.
You have 7 principles in Fractal, which is around how to manage people.
The number 1 principle is about idea is to not micromanage them.
So you made a lot of predictions about AI.
I do feel that's the first time in our history we have an opportunity to eradicate poverty.
What were those things which made you successful?
The ability to...
Hi everyone, I'm your host Shivank and we are part of the 01 Network by Zerodha. Together, we intend to bring you insights from the top thinkers in the field of entrepreneurship, technology, and investing.
Let's say that you have nothing. You have to start from scratch. No capital, no network. But you have all the insights, all the knowledge that you have currently. And you have to start from scratch. What will you do? Which industry will you pick? How will you do it differently? And why? Break this down for us.
Do I have the skills?
You have all the skills, all the knowledge, all the intelligence, but you have to start from scratch. No network, no capital.
Let's say I'm 25-year-old that has all the skills and the knowledge and the intelligence, but does not have anything else.
No capital, no network, nothing.
The first thing to do is to know yourself. The journey always begins with self-knowledge. So know yourself means, do I know my strengths? Do I know my weaknesses? Do I know how I learn? So can I find that zone which I call as a sweet spot, which is pleasure, meaning, and strength? What is that area where I can have fun? See, anything I do for a long period of time, I need to have fun. So if I'm working 70 hours a week in the office, it better be fun because you can't really extend yourself and sacrifice your life for anything. It has to be fun. So you have to find the intersection between fun, meaning, and strength. Fun is very easy to understand, right? Do you feel like coming to work every day? That's fun. Meaning is something where you can see the larger purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. So you're going somewhere, you have a certain understanding that, look, it's not just for me, it's serving a larger purpose. It's much bigger than me, then it's meaning, right? And then area of strength is where you feel like I'm losing track of time. When I'm doing this, time just flows, right? I'm in the state of flow. When you find an area of your strength, you start to experience a zone of flow. So when it is fun, it's meaningful, and it's an area of strength, that's the place where great careers are made, great businesses are built. So the first thing is when you introspect, when you understand who you are, then you try to find that place where you might find that zone of flow where you can really make the biggest contribution in the world. I think it's not just about making money, right? Of course, we all want to make money, and financial security is one of the things that we all aspire to, and so on. But if you study Maslowian hierarchy, Abraham Maslow built that hierarchy of human needs. You start with basic needs. Yes, roti kapda makan and all of that. And then you have love and belonging needs. Then you have self-esteem needs. And then you have self-actualization needs. Eventually, we want to go down that path. So assume that your security needs will get taken care of if you focus on eventually getting to self-actualization. And I'm assuming that all of us have the benefit of good education and, skills, etc., that we have acquired. So go and first explore who are you and where can you do your best work. And once you have figured that out, then go after everything else. That's the number one. Number two is you have to have a network of friends or a few people that you can. Not every skill in the world is something that you can acquire yourself, because you have a certain areas of interest, etc. But to build anything, to build a business, you will need people with complementary skills. I would say at least pick one co-founder. If you're starting an entrepreneurial venture, find a co-founder who complements you. If you are the CTO type, get a CEO type. If you are the CEO type, get the CTO type. Broadly, these are the two types of people that would exist. CEO type is one who can sell, who can evangelize, who can maybe build teams and can lead. And CTO is someone who can crack a product, can crack a very big idea, can go deep into execution, and so on. And broadly, these are the two types that you can find. If you are one of the two types, find the other type. Two people teams tend to build great ideas. So once you figure out who that co-founder is, and then you can brainstorm with her or him, what is that zone of pleasure, meaning, and strength for both of you, and then you can start to build the core of an idea. Nowadays, it's really not that difficult to build something, build a proof of concept. So I think then build that, and then the rest follows. And go raise a little bit of capital, and then build on the idea. Solve one deep problem. I would say again, you can start with multiple things, and answers would have been different depending on when you started it. When Fractal started, when I started, answers were different. Now, if you were to start, the answer would be to find a very, very clear problem, a user, a pain point that you can solve. Right? Something in the world is not exactly how it should be. You should feel like, this makes no sense. Why is this world not working this way? Then you found the root of a problem or a root of a solution. Right? Find that user, solve that problem for her or him, and then really go after that in a way that is remarkable, right? And that's the crux or the kernel of an idea that you have to build on. Do not worry so much about whether it is how big it is and the idea, etc. It will become big because the idea will expand, the market will expand, things will change. So the idea will also evolve. But find that one problem deeply and solve for it. And then if you can make that a model by which you can get paid for it, even better, right? Think of who's going to, the person whose problem you're solving may not be the one who's paying for it, right? So figure that out as to how the economics of that will work out. Who's going to pay for it and why does it make sense? And what economic problem you're solving, therefore, which are the entity that will pay you for it, right? Once you have solved that problem, I think the rest will follow, investors will follow, and so on. And over time, I think if you have to build a network, so if you said you start with no network, one of the most important determinants of success is what kind of friends network do you have, and how helpful are they when you need them. But it doesn't start by them helping you. It starts by you helping them. So over time, build those sets of relationships where you are helpful. When you have time, try to use your skills, your time, your resources to be helpful to people around you. Because that law of karma will play, and when you need them, they will come and help you as well. So do not focus on when that will happen. Do not do quid pro quo. Go ahead and be helpful to other people. And over time, build that set of networks and set of people and relationships that will come in very handy. Typically, that happens in your undergrad. You can build a bunch of the best relationship you can build are when you are very young and you are impressionable, but so are your peers. Right? So build this amazing set of friends in your undergrad time. Then when you go to grad school, for example, if you're going an MBA or something like that, again, very, very important that you build a solid network of friendships where you are catching up, you are helpful, not just envy and, measuring who's got more salary, etc., but you're actually genuinely there in their lives to celebrate their weddings and other important events in their lives, being helpful when they're looking for jobs, etc. And eventually, when you do that over a sustained period of time, let's say 5, 10, 15 years, you'll see that you'll have a really set of amazing friends who are always there to help you. And this is not just about your classmates, right? It could be your neighbors, it could be your neighborhood club, or it could be, other friends that you've acquired over time. It could be friends of friends. Some of the weaker relationships that you have, friends of friends, they can be very helpful in when you're looking for a job or looking for help or looking for a client as a business. So build that network. And the key thing to that is you need to spend time and you need to be helpful without really anticipating something in return, at least for the moment, right? Someday, it will come in handy. That law of karma will play out. Law of reciprocity will play out. So build that network and build this idea. And as far as jobs are concerned, again, this pleasure, meaning, strength works everywhere. Look for the right kind of jobs that give you maximum amount of learning in the beginning rather than maximum amount of pay. So look for where is the area where you want to go, because that's a pleasure, meaning, strength intersection, and which is the one that will expose you to the maximum amount of learning in the next first 5 to 10 years. You have to learn. You have to really expose yourself to all kinds of learnings in the first 10 years. It'll create the foundation for the next 20, 30 years of your growth. So make sure that you find jobs where learning is maximized.
What would be meaning, strength, and joy for you?
Reading books is a lot of fun for me, because it is, apart from the fact that it's pleasurable, it's also very meaningful because I'm learning to get better in life and I'm learning a bunch of different things. That could be an area. I've always found math to be an area which is fun and meaningful to me. Psychology to be an area to be fun and meaningful to me. So that's why when we built Fractal, we try to build it in the intersection of math and psychology, right? That's we are trying to power every human decision in the enterprise. So we have to understand human behavior, and we understand human behavior through math. So it's been that is one of the reasons why I've been around for 23 years building Fractal, because it never felt like I'm actually working. I've always had fun. So when you have this pleasure, meaning, and strength, work doesn't look like work. Work looks like a lot of fun, joy. There's a lot of meaning in the work.
How do you decide on this is the industry that I want to work in?
The choice of industry is actually a very important choice. So your question is very valid, because not all industries have the right economic structure. And industry choice, it appears from all the research, that industry choice is one of the major determinants of success. Like they say, if you want to be a millionaire, start with $1 billion and then start an airline company, right? Yeah. So airline industry is famously really bad because the economics of that are... Now, it's not that many people have tried. Many people, very smart people, have tried to test their ego or test their skills and said, I'll start an airline company, and eventually have failed, right? So there is something to say about the industry and choice of industry. Similarly, a pharmaceutical industry is extremely attractive because of the set of regulatory, approvals, which makes the entry barriers to be very high, the cost of R&D, and then your ability to patent it and then drive money for the next 25 years. All these things come together to make pharma industry a very attractive industry. So when you pick an industry, the industry characteristics do matter. So yes, you have to pick an industry that has the right economic structure. But I would say that you first pick the area of pleasure, meaning, and strength, where you're having fun, and then try to pick the industry where it might be most applicable, and which has the right economic structure.
What do you mean by right economic structure? What are industry which has right economic structure? What are some industries which don't have a right economic structure? And also bring in the time aspect, because sometimes time plays a role in whether the industry will have the right economic structure or not.
I mean, the easiest model is the Porter's 5-force model for, Michael Porter, wrote the seminal book on strategy called Comparative Strategy. And what he talks about you have the 5 forces model, which is essentially who are your competitors, who are your suppliers, who are your clients, and then what are the macroeconomic forces. So you look at all of these things and see, do you have bargaining power with your clients, for example? Do you have bargaining power with the suppliers? Your suppliers could be talent you're hiring. So you look at that structure of who are the players in this industry, who are all the players who are going to influence the success, my success, and therefore can I get fair share of what value that I'm bringing in. I can't give you a ready answer that here are 3 industries that work or 3 industries that don't work, but I can tell you broadly that if you analyze the industry this way, you can see whether you can build something for the long term or not. Some industries are more attractive like pharma, some industries are less attractive like airlines. If you look at the technology industry, where by and large we see a lot of tech entrepreneurs these days, again, because it's every industry is a tech industry. There's incredible amount of competition, but there are some models that have become extremely successful. Like the ones which involve a lot of IP creation and then either rent seeking, which is like, for example, you build a product, a new innovative idea, and then you are able to charge for that for a long period of time because the economics are such. For example, any data in tech, any data related businesses are very interesting because what you can do is once you have accumulated the data, when everybody is supplying some data to you and then you are sitting on the top of the data and providing insights, it's very helpful because no one player has all the data, but you have all the data. And then you can charge a rent for so there are lots of business models that you see which are involve rent seeking with data. So very data driven business models are very helpful. The other one is called the system lock-in business models, right? Think of, these are very difficult to build, like an auction business or a marketplace business models, right? So Amazon builds a marketplace. Now sellers are coming because the buyers on the platform. Buyers are coming because the sellers are selling on the platform. So once enough buyers and sellers come in, it becomes a very attractive business model because now you are the place where everyone has to come in. Seller has to come in because buyers, I can't find buyers elsewhere. Buyers are coming because all the sellers are here and so on. So those kinds of business models are very powerful. These are very hard to build. So again, it doesn't mean that it's easy to build that, right? Because once you gain such sufficient traction, these are unstoppable. And know that tech is disrupting everything. Every industry is going through disruption, right? So no matter what moat you create, there'll be a disruptive force that will come in and challenge you at some point of time. So everything is only for a limited period of time. Eventually you have to innovate. And in the long term, you have to differentiate just by culture. Most companies, the longest term differentiator is culture, right? Can you attract the right talent? Can you attract the right clients? Can you attract the world to look at you in a different way? That eventually is a function of how you are telling your story and how you're building your culture.
We'll talk about the business model and business model of Fractal, the culture and the differentiation that you're talking about. But before that, you mentioned that you're a student of behavioral psychology and mathematics. Tell us your understanding of behavioral sciences. Because as Fractal, you help companies take right decisions. And to take decisions, you need to understand the behavior of people. Can you double click on the learnings that you have had so far being the student of psychology and behavior sciences?
Most important insight to understand is that we all feel like we are a thinking machine that makes rational choices, sometimes guided by emotions, right? Sometimes emotions might come in the way or might help or hurt, but mostly we by and large feel that we make logical decisions, sometimes backed by emotions. And reality, turns out, is that we are all making emotional decisions and rationality is just a slave of emotions. So let's say you want to eat this little apple or a little chocolate on the table. Now, your brain has already decided, your elephant brain has decided that I want to eat that chocolate. Now you'll put your rationality to work. You'll come up with logic like, okay, I did not have anything since last evening, or maybe I should be okay to eat chocolate. I've been fasting for the last 3-4 days and I've been healthy, so this chocolate is okay for me. Or you can say, hey, I have a long day ahead of me. So your rationality actually is the explaining part of it, right? You come up with a decision and your rational mind comes with beautiful ways to explain why it makes sense. And it's not the other way around, where you do the analysis and then you take a leap of faith with emotion, which is how we think normally as we decide. It's the opposite. So the model of human brain is a small little rider sitting on a very large elephant. The elephant is the irrational or the emotional part of the brain. And the little rider sitting on top is a rational part of the brain. The rider thinks that he is in charge. The reality is that the elephant is in charge, but the rider has a few tricks by which he can shape the elephant's behavior. The really powerful part is the elephant, and the rider has a few tools at his disposal to shape the elephant's behavior. Then you have a very different model of how the human brain works. And when you realize that, then you realize that, okay, this is now the whole world has to be designed for the elephant. So therefore, if you build the right structures for the elephant, for example, when you make something easy, the elephant does it, right? So sometimes by getting you to decide on something, for example, if I want you to eat a chocolate, I don't have to tell you the logical reasons for why chocolate is good for you or why my chocolate is better than, if I just keep it on your desk, within your arm's length, you will go and grab the chocolate. So if you go to, let's say, our Fractal's cafeteria at lunch, right? And if you see all the junk food right in front, accessible, and healthy food at the back, you will first eat the junk food because that's the most easily accessible part of it. But if you did the opposite, if you put some healthy food in the front and you put the junk food a little bit like 2 feet away, right? It's not that anybody can go and grab it, but your chances of eating slightly more healthy food increases. So you can design the world in a way when you understand what the rider does and what the elephant does, and design it for the fact that the elephant is a powerful part, not the rider.
And the same tools are used by some billion-dollar companies to trap attention, to trap, decision-making, to nudge
Think of Amazon one-click. Amazon pioneered the idea of one-click shopping back in the 1990s. And they actually got a patent for it. And they've actually had multiple people in the world pay for that patent, including Apple. Apple paid for Amazon's patent on the one-click shopping. And the idea was that if you click that one button, it does everything else. It figures out your shipping address, it figures out your credit card information, it figures out your, everything else, right? It just completes the transaction right there. Now you felt like, what's the big deal? It made it slightly easier. 2 more clicks and I would have anyway got the product. So what's the big deal? It turns out to be a very big deal because you've cut short the entire cycle of decision making. All you need is that one emotional, I need this product right now, and click it. And that's it, done. And then you can, once you've clicked it, you feel the rational part will come to justify, it's a good idea. It's a very good purchase. The rational part will explain, don't worry. I think it's a good idea. You got a great deal on this product. It's a very good product for you, etc. So the chances that you will actually undo that purchase, return the product, are very low. So that's how it works. The one-click shopping has been a huge innovation by Amazon. It seems very simple, but that is an example of making something very easy and catering to the irrational, the elephant part of your brain.
So you spoke about certain tools that the rational brain can use in order to control the elephant brain. What are those tools?
Not control as much as guide, right? So one of them is training, right? If you get, elephant is trainable, right? So if you, for example, shape the path, let's say you want people to not litter on the streets, but you want them to put trash in the trash cans, right? It's a very noble purpose. Now you can put make trash cans more available. First thing is that if you have to walk 50 feet to a trash can versus if I have to walk 5 feet, I'm more likely to walk 5 feet. So have more trash cans is good. But the other thing that people have done, very simple stuff they have done, is put a little path on the road. Just have a little, yellow strip on the road which says guides you to a trash can. That little guidance changes behavior. Many more people are now going to walk to the trash can just because there's a little yellow line directing from where they're standing to where the trash can is. A little more helpful, right? So the thing is that when you create some guidance, you can get the right action, the elephant to behave in the right way. So that's the way in which the rider can actually shape what the elephant can do. That's an example. But there are lots of examples in which the rider can get some level of control and some level of guidance for the elephant to do the right things.
What are some other tools, some other examples where the rider can guide the elephant to take better decisions?
For example, the elephant is also a creature of habit. If something becomes a habit, then you will get the elephant to behave that way. And sometimes you can build that habit by creating a little bit of a reward. So, for example, let's say you really enjoy watching Netflix. Now, if you can combine it with, let's say, walking. Let's say you like walking, you want to walk, but walking is not rewarding in itself. It's more of a chore, right? Now, if you can somehow combine that, every time you walk, you'll get to watch Netflix. So maybe you can keep your phone and walk and watch Netflix at the same time. You've combined two behaviors now. You've incentivized your walking by giving you this, right? Now your walking will go up because now, and then eventually you can create a rule by saying that, look, I'm never going to watch Netflix, lying down on my sofa and watching it on my TV. I'm going to watch it on my phone and I'll be walking while I'm watching it. Now you've combined it in a way that the elephant loves it because the elephant gets to watch the Netflix. But you also have created a very helpful habit in this way.
If someone has to learn all this behavioral aspect, what are certain things that one should read and learn from? If they want to understand psychology, behavioral sciences, and stuff like this.
I think there are countless books to be read. I think Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is obviously comes to mind. There's a beautiful book by Daniel Kahneman called Noise, which he published a few years after, I think a couple of years back, which is also good. Many books written by Dan Ariely on rationality, and for example, one called Predictably Irrational. That's a good book. The best book that I've read on human psychology so far is called Influence. Robert Cialdini, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. First book that anyone should read on psychology, on human behavior. That was very instrumental in my getting super interested in psychology, which I read, I think maybe 20 years, 25 years back. It made a big difference. And then once you off that, there are countless books, lots of great authors who've written very, very good books over the years. Richard Thaler comes to mind. His book is called Misbehaving, which is also a good book. And so on. There are countless books.
Are there other things like observing people you can do apart from reading books to understand sciences? And have you learned something by observing people around you?
Yeah, obviously. I think observing people and how people make decisions is very helpful. Look, what you are going to see is only the behavior. You'll see, when you observe people, you see the behaviors that they're exhibiting. You don't see the mental processes that are going into their behavior, right? You're inferring that. So that to that extent, it's helpful, but also remember that it's in some ways limiting, because you don't have access to their mental processes. You only have access to their outward behavior. It is still helpful because you can over time see the patterns in how people behave and what drives what. Right? For example, you might end up realizing that every time I'm hungry, I get somewhat angry. Forget observing other people. Start by observing yourself. The best observations are on yourself. Start observing your own behavior. And you'll see that there are some patterns think of when do you behave in a way that is really good and the way is really bad. And start seeing what are the underlying, what are the environmental cues. We are shaped tremendously by the environment more than we always understand.
Can you give an example?
Let's say you you feel like walking into a bakery. You feel like, it's a great idea that I'm walking to a bakery. Of course, I'm hungry and, I'm etc. Right? But what you may not have realized is that a little smell of the freshly baked food is actually driving your move to that. So when you're walking in the airport aisle, right, walking to a terminal, this freshly baked smell comes in, and literally 2 seconds later, you are in the bakery, right, and getting some bagels or whatever else you're getting. Or you have this fresh smell of coffee that's driving you to walk into a Starbucks and get coffee. And many of these stores actually, they actually spread these smells around because that is their way to get people in. Right? So the environment shapes our behavior. You might say, hey, this is my daily habit. I do coffee every day. The environment is not shaping it. No, it's not true. The environment is a very important determinant of how we behave. So when you observe the environment around you and then you see your behavior over a period of time by introspection, you'll start to see that this environment has a bearing on my behavior. If you're objective enough and you are careful enough to observe, you'll see over time that your self-observation will lead you to insights about how you behave. And it will give you some breathtaking insights that you thought you were in control, you are not. Right? How you behave when you're hungry, how you behave when you're full, how you behave in a bright sunny day versus how you behave when there's no sunlight in the room, how you behave when you had a fight in the morning at home and then you got to office or got to school will be very different from when you didn't have that. You start pattern matching your behaviors to your environment and other actions. Then you start to get a very deeper insight into yourself and to other people as well.
So you were an investment banker before starting Fractal. Tell us, what kind of role were you? What kind of deals were you part of before the 2000 era and before starting up Fractal?
Yes, I was fascinated with the idea of investment banking because I thought there's a lot of mathematics in investment banking, and math and psychology are the two areas like I've already told you. That is, so I thought there's a lot of math and there's a lot of money, right? So that what's not to like? So I joined in 1998 and I joined an investment bank called ANZ Investment Bank. And my first few months were quite difficult because around that time, two major global events happened. Indian Sensex, by the way, was at 2,800 at that time. Indian markets were really down in the gutter at that time. Stock markets, I'm just as a context I'm providing you. Two global events happened. One was a hedge fund called LTCM, Long-Term Capital Management. These were made by, this hedge fund was set up by Nobel laureates. They actually shut down. And that was triggered actually by the other global event, which was Russia defaulting on its debt in 1998. Because of LTCM failure and Russian default, the markets were in a tough spot. So a lot of deals were not, the credit deals were not happening. I was in what was called a structured debt, global structured debt, which was about creating structured deals for raising debt capital. So it's complicated. So I'll explain to you. For example, if I'm an airline company and I want to do some sale and lease back of aircraft, I come up with a structured way of doing it. It is tax efficient when instead of buying the aircraft, I do there's a sort of lease back arrangement. You create it as a lease. So there's structured deals like that. There are places where we were taking a bunch of mortgages, pulling them into a vehicle and then issuing securities against it, which is called asset-backed and mortgage-backed securitization. So we did some of those kinds of deals. It's a little complicated. I'll not get into too much details, but so we did these kinds of deals in 98 and 99. And that's my early inroads into the banking world. I found it to be reasonably fun because math is fun, but I couldn't find it to be meaningful. What I realized was very early on that most of these structured deals were about saving taxes and saving capital. Tax breaks, or you can allocate less capital. I didn't see how it was adding value to the world. So I didn't feel like I want to spend the rest of my life doing this stuff. So I quit and started Fractal.
And what was the deepest insight behind starting up Fractal?
It's an entrepreneurial venture. It's one thing is to now take a retrospective lens 23 years later and give you a lot of gyan about what went into Fractal, etc. The reality is that you are figuring it out. In the beginning, we wanted to be entrepreneurs. We didn't have an idea in mind. We didn't have anything in mind. We just were exploring a little bit, right? As to what we just knew that we wanted to be entrepreneurs because something had changed in my life. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur in my life, but I saw some entrepreneurs, I saw some successful capital raises, and I felt like, you know what, I can do it. So at that point of time, being an entrepreneur was more important than the idea itself. So we got together, a few friends, and we started Fractal. We didn't realize what we were going to do. And only over time, once we had the initial challenges and initial failures, did we go back and say, okay, what is that pleasure, meaning, strength, right? What is that area where we want to do? And using mathematics to help make decisions seemed like a place where, I could find that, and somehow Fractal got built. But it was after a year-long exploration of various kinds of failures that went into it.
So at core, Fractal helps bigger companies to make decisions, right? Tell us the stuff in your journey of 2 decades. What was some of the toughest decisions that you made in your life, in your business at Fractal? And also, giving this analogy, tell us the art of decision making, how to take right decision. What have you learned about decision making by helping other people to decide?
Again, it's a very complex topic because decision making is complex. And there is no silver bullet by which I can say everything. Here's decision making. In fact, I have a course on Coursera called Human Decision Making and Its Biases. It's about 12 to 14 hours course. And I think it's only 6-7 hours of maybe 4 hours of actual lectures and a few assignments. I would highly advise anyone to go and take a look at that course and see. It's free. It's free for everyone. So you can take a shot at it. It's helpful. It does a better job than what I can do in 5 minutes here. But to just give you some insights about human decision making, I think one thing is to realize that human decision making has all these biases in it, in the way we make decisions. So understanding ourselves is helpful in making that. And then to your question about some of the biggest choices I have made in my life, decisions I've made, I'll give you one framework. It's something that I've learned from Jeff Bezos of Amazon. This is called the regret minimization framework, which is when you are making a decision, sometimes 2 decisions will look both good and you don't feel like, you're not able to make out which decision to make. That time to think of is, what decision will I regret more? If you think about that, for example, I have options here, which is I could be in this meeting in this office right now with my colleagues, or I have my daughter's performance in school. She has a guitar performance in school today. And I have to decide whether I should do this meeting or I should take 2 hours go because she really wants me there to watch her guitar performance. Now, no, this meeting is important. An office meeting is important. Something important is coming up because of which you have to do this. And I've already committed to that. And then here's another, my daughter wants this as well. Now, when I make the regret minimization framework, I think a year from now, 2 years from now, what will I regret more? Missing this meeting? I don't even remember what this meeting was about a year from now. And life will go on. But my daughter might remember it 10 years later and say, hey, Dad, you missed my guitar performance when I was making this guitar performance. I will regret not having shown up for that. So I will go for that guitar performance and skip this meeting right now, even though at this point of time, this meeting maybe looks more important and more urgent and feels like it's just a fifth grader or sixth grader doing a guitar performance. What's the big deal? I can miss it. It feels like that. But if you use the regret minimization framework, you see from a historical retrospective lens and see what will I be regretting in future, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, 6 months from now. And that gives you little clarity as to what is the right decision at any point of time. So that's just one kind of a hack or one kind of a mental framework or mental model to make decisions. So you eventually, over time, you build a lot of these kinds of heuristics and mental frameworks for saying, okay, this is the right decision for me. And this is the kind of, in this scenario, I should apply this framework to reach decision. These are all kinds of frameworks and tools to help you make the right decision or validate some of the decisions you're making. Okay. So if I have to summarize everything that I have to do, I teach in decision making. The first thing I'll say is always bring in information, data to make decisions. The more, if you bring in data to a decision, it's always helpful. And data to a decision can come from experience. When you bring in new data points, you increase the quality of the decision. Second, widen the number of the decision to yes, no, to options. So this is another powerful thing about decision making is if you're talking about one decision and the answer is either I do this or I don't do this. Apart from that, let's say you want to watch a movie, okay? And the options are I can watch this movie or I can not watch this movie. As opposed to that, you can say, should I watch this movie or should I watch that movie? Now your decision quality has improved dramatically because now you have two options, this movie or this movie, and the third option, not watch any movie. But when you expand the choice set, the decision quality improves. Sometimes the decisions are framed as yes, no. When you expand that to multiple choices and then you reframe the decision, it becomes much more, the quality of the decision improves. Third is improve the process of decision making, right? So which is about, a simple thing like talking to a few people can really improve the quality of decision making, right? So the example I teach in my course is the movie 12 Angry Men. When they have to come to a decision when the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Everybody thinks he's guilty to begin with. But once they engage in the process of carefully examining the evidence and talking to each other and questioning their assumptions, they come to a different decision. So sometimes it's about the running of the proper process of decision making, especially when the decisions are very complex. So think of who do I get married to, right? A decision that you will have to make some point of time, right? That decision is a very important decision because whether it's a good decision or bad decision, you'll know many, many years from now or sometime, right? But in future, much, much later in future. So that's the time when I think engaging in the right process to arrive at the decision is helpful.
So let's say if you have to make a decision of whom to marry, what would be the right process to give us an analogy using this situation?
Again, I cannot speak for everyone. I think there is a whole system of arranged marriages in India. It works for a reason because there is actually a process around that, which is about everybody's matching your community, your horoscope, all kinds of things and the recognition is that when a marriage is happening, it's actually two families getting married. It's not two individuals getting married, and therefore there is some compatibility. And all that happens, and there are some steps taken. Time between when you sort of meet the person for the first time to when you make a decision. So you don't make it in a rush. There's all a process, right? So it works. You can see that the Indian system actually has some of the process elements, which is why the arranged marriage is not as horrible as you might think, right? You might think that arranged marriages, they should never work. But turns out that they're relatively more successful than you expected them to be. This is the reason. That's just gives you a sense of process in an arranged marriage. If in case of a love marriage, right, which is what many of the new generation will actually marry for love and not because it's an arranged marriage. And I also did the same. I think giving your time, I think, is good, because initially you may have a lot of passions, but you may not know if it's the right thing, right? Whether your values match. Just going through saying that, okay, here are some of the important places where, how will you decide? How will I decide?
Values example?
Values are essentially about what is more important to you than something else, right? What is more important? If you ask the question, right versus wrong is morals, right? What is right versus what is wrong? That's also important. Most of the time we will agree on morals, right? More or less, there will be agreement on right versus wrong. Values are about what is right, what is a bigger right? What is more important? So let's say you want to marry someone who's, let's say, from a different culture. Let's say she is an American. Now, this could become one of the big flashpoints of your life. If you don't crack this problem, is respecting elders is something that you think it is take for granted because you've grown up in India. You think everybody is like me. Because when you grow up in a culture, we feel like everybody else is going to be like me. And she has grown up in a culture where it is not the case. No, it's not that she is wrong and you are right and you are wrong and you're right. She values something more than what you value. Your order of values are different. So when you bring topics like these and you make sure that your values are aligned with that person, the chances of the marriage lasting for the next 50 years is much, much higher. So that is the process of it. It is systematically about sharing information and sharing your vulnerability, sharing your life story, and figuring out in various places which is more important than the other. And once you feel like, okay, now we have handled the tough issues, we think that we have these very critical values we have agreed on, then I think the rest of the life is easy. The other part of the process is making sure the parents meet, right? Sometimes it is still, in India, for example, yes, parents are a very important source in our lives, and her parents also, right? So in which case, parents, so that process of, okay, I found someone, I think she's amazing, I want to get married to her, to then thinking of, here's my rest of my life. And these are the kinds of conflicts and these are the kinds of choices we'll make. For example, when I got married to my wife, we were very clear that we're going to have only one child. This is it. We'll have only one child and that's how it will be. But that, if we hadn't had that conversation, I could have naturally assumed that, hey, of course we're going to have more than one child, maybe two. And that could have become a conflict. So sometimes discussing some of these issues and going through the time and process of figuring out the values gets you to the right decision eventually. You might obviously you fell in love, and these are, there are various reasons where you fall in love, neurochemical reasons and other reasons. But after that, going through this process can help you in making sure that your decision is right.
And what if after, agreeing onto something, you find the values are different? For example, if you're, different cultures, one culture respects parents, one culture, somehow lower. What do you do in that situation? And give us a business perspective also. Certain times you serve clients which may not necessarily, agree on the same values that you have as a company, but you have to serve the client, you have taken the check. What do you do in this situation?
Remember, you do 80-20, right? You the most important 20% of values which drive 80% of the conflict, you want to make sure that you are aligned on that, right? And remember that as you get married over the years, things will change, right? Matters will change, your values will evolve, our values will evolve, things will change for sure. If you've agreed on the crux, right, then you can adjust over time. You can, because now the basics have been done, and over time you have to give permission for the other person to grow and yourself to grow, and that it's not a static thing. It's a continuously changing relationship. So you have to be ready for that in every situation. You make some decisions, but the world evolves, and you have to evolve with that. Now, coming to clients, first thing is be very choiceful who to serve, right? So you don't have to serve everybody, and sometimes there are situations where we have been very clear that we will not serve this client. I'll give you one example. Again, without getting into the gory details of that, we were serving a client which had a very abusive culture, meaning that it was very hierarchical and the bosses could simply abuse left, right, and center their subordinates. We were getting very respected. We actually started to serve that client. We were respected because we were seen as experts coming from the outside, but we saw the culturally how difficult it was. And our people were uncomfortable because we came from a culture where there's much more respect, much more value, and is much more egalitarian as an organization. It was very hierarchical. Hierarchical is okay, we can still be fine with that. But when it became abusive to their people, so we decided to not continue on that piece of work, because we said that, okay, happiness of our people, engagement of people is required, because that's when we'll do that best work. If we are operating with fear, yes, today somebody got abused who's not my team, but tomorrow I could get abused, and people are not comfortable in working in that environment. We are actually working in the client's premises and so on. It was not going to work.
How did you say no? What reason did you give for, is it the same reason you be upfront, Kia, this is the reason that we are leaving, or do you find, politically correct ways to close that deal?
I mean, I don't think the conversation is good when you go and tell them, hey, client, we don't like your values. I mean, I don't think it's not necessary to be that confrontational or that direct. I believe in directness in everything aspect of my life, but calling someone out and saying that you are evil or that your culture is something I don't like, I think it takes it to another extreme. So we'll probably not go there. But contracts get renewed, and you don't have to renew a contract that you're not interested in. Eventually, you serve a client, and the client wants to. I mean, it is when both parties are interested in a contract. So if one party is not interested, contracts will fall.
So you spoke about different business model at the start of the session, but tell us the business model of Fractal. There are a lot of companies which have a lot of data, and you go and tell them what to do with this data and kind of sit on over the top, do all the analytics and tell them the insights from this. So let's say if you generate insights, how do you figure out कि ये insight इतना valuable है and so we'll charge this much amount for it? How does it make sense? How does the business work?
Yeah, I wish we could go and charge people on the quality of the insights. The way we think about this is that the data is there. Client, most of the time the data is client's data, and therefore the extra value generated from the insight belongs to them. We don't think of that we have the right to charge for by the quality of the insight. So we usually charge them. Sometimes we can. Sometimes when we take risks. Sometimes we say, look, we will do this, and if it's successful, then we get a share of the outcome. Then both of us are getting into this relationship knowing that we are taking some additional risks, and therefore we are entitled to additional outcomes. If let's say we say we have a very interesting way in which building models, and now if you run these campaigns, you will get much more revenue, and we will take a share of that revenue. Sometimes it works. It's not often, but we do get into relationships where we are taking some risks, and because of that, we also get a share of the rewards that get created. By and large, how it works is that we think of, okay, here's a problem we are solving, and here's how it takes to solve the problem. There's a value, roughly the value being created, and this is roughly what you will pay, and that understanding is set up in the beginning. And if they get more than that, great. We want to generate at least $1 billion of value for every client that we serve. So when you go into a relationship, we are thinking, I must add $1 billion of value to the client over the next few years. If I feel like I can contribute to that extent, then I will get into the relationship. Otherwise, you know what, maybe they will pay me and maybe it'll be good for me, but if I'm not generating enough value for them, because Fractal's thinking is play for the long term. We want to serve clients who are, eventually paying us $30 million a year or something in that ballpark, right? And therefore, if you are not generating $1 billion of value every year, then why will they pay us $30 million every year? So the thinking is always, okay, what decisions can they make inside the organizations that can create $1 billion of value every year, which means that the companies have to be big and they have to do something very big. So we are also very selective about who we serve. And that's all set up in a very consistent way to deliver $1 billion of value and get, $20-30 million of revenue from them every year.
Got it. So does it work on how many people you are putting on the project? Does it involve how much time you are spending? How does the pricing?
Yeah, the basic models it is either output based, which we're saying that here's problem that we're solving, is setting up something to make this decision, etc. And this is roughly what it would cost you. So there's an explicit agreement, it's a fixed price engagement. Or it could be that we are setting up a team of X number of people, and therefore we'll charge you Y dollars per month because we are charging this, and it's probably likely to take X, Z number of months. Therefore, this is the charge that. So these are the two models in which primarily it's set up, and then there are some where we say, look, don't worry about any of that. we will deliver this to you every month. We'll deliver this to you every month. We're charging you just a flat fee for what we're delivering. And if the units of output go up, you pay us more. But that's how we're doing. That's the third model. And the fourth model is, hey, you know what? We'll do this. We'll make all the investments. You don't have to do anything. But once you start delivering revenue, give us a share of that revenue for us. We'll make all the investments on your behalf. So you don't have to pay us anything. You don't care how many people are working, what software you're using, nothing. All we need is once the revenue starts kicking in, you get a share of that revenue or profits or whatever else that you're making.
There is some interesting stories of acquiring one of your biggest clients or one of the clients which, kind of change your journey, the journey of Fractal.
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple of them. Number one, I will talk about P&G. P&G, Procter & Gamble, did a worldwide search for partners in 2006. I mean, we were interested in serving P&G, but we were just setting up in the US, etc. And this came to us from the ether, right? And they sent it to 30 different providers around the world. And this topic was called marketing mix modeling. So this was something which was hot back in 2006. It's still very interesting, but in a different way. The idea was to see all the marketing dollars that a company like P&G spends. They spend something like, I think, billions of, I think they're the largest advertiser in the world. One of the largest advertisers in the world and the largest digital advertiser or something like that. So they spend some $8 billion of advertising dollars every year. And I don't remember how much they were spending back then, but they're a big advertiser. And they want to make sure that the dollars they're spending are spent on the right channels, on the right things, and they're getting the right impact. So the idea is to connect your marketing dollars to your revenues. If you spend more on marketing, you should get more revenue and it should be more profitable and so on. So that's the idea of marketing mix. So they sent out an RFI or request for information of all the vendors, asking them, what is your expertise in this area? The reason this story is interesting is that when they showed up in our office, I think 3 or 4 weeks after they sent that RFI, the first thing we told them was, excuse me, P&G, you sent us this information. Thanks a lot for asking these questions. First, we must tell you that we have never worked on the marketing mix problem in our lives before. This is a new area for us. We have done a lot of very exciting work in the world of AI and analytics and so on, but this is a new problem for us. Having said that, you sent this information to us 30 days ago, and in the last 30 days, we have done all this research in this space, and here's our thinking on this topic, and so on. That actually really worked because P&G thought, hey, these guys are such refreshingly honest. And they didn't come and pretend that they know a space, because they met with 30 other people. But we were the most honest in admitting that this is the extent of our knowledge, this is the extent of our ignorance, and here's the hard work that we have done in the last 30 days to get to this point. They really like that. And that has been the bedrock of that relationship, which is now almost 17, 18 years old. So it tells you that the foundations of honesty and integrity and candor is what still drives a partnership, because they know that we are not going to bullshit them and vice versa. And so that's just one example of a client story. Maybe I'll tell you one more client story. The other story I will tell you is that of, we serve one of the largest tech companies on the planet. And this relationship was originated by an ex-Fractalite. So this Fractalite had worked for Fractal in 2005 and 6, maybe part of 2007. But he had left long back. 10 years after he left, he had just done his MBA from one of the US universities, and he was doing very well in his career. He was in the US. He had worked for Fractal in India. He reached out to me and said, Srikanth, I have this client, this great tech company I'm sure you would love to work for. I want to make an introduction for you. Sure. They made an introduction. The client came in and they spent a couple of days in our office. They gave us a problem, and we did a fantastic job of solving that problem, thankfully. And then the next 2-3 years, that client became one of the largest clients for Fractal. So they were working with a technology vendor, not to be named, but let's say one of the largest technology companies on the planet. And the guy was like, these guys don't know analytics on AI. They're just a software company pretending to be analytics, or whatever software services company pretending to be analytics. You guys really know what AI is and how to solve it. And therefore, I'm going to move a lot of my business to you. And it's become one of our largest client relationships, very, very proud to serve this very big tech company. The reason I'm telling you this story is because this came from an ex-Fractalite. And what I've seen over the years is that ex-Fractalites are a very important source of business to us, right? Because what I believe is that the people who leave you are your biggest brand ambassadors after they have quit the company, because they have experienced the company. They know the culture, they know the problem solving, they know everything. When they go and tell everyone that I used to work for that company, that's an amazing company, you guys should work with them. That's an amazing endorsement, right? So we've seen over the years that people who leave Fractal are Fractal's biggest ambassadors. And also the Fractal principle is how you treat people on the way out is very important. On the way in, everything is great, right? But when you way out, you're typically, why are you leaving this company? And, which competitor are you joining? Can I cut some of your variable pay? How can I make your life miserable at the time you're exiting? Is how most companies behave. We think the opposite. We think treat people really well on the way out. As we call it, once a Fractalite, always a Fractalite. That is the principle within Fractal. So we treat them as Fractalites now, present, past, future. They're still Fractalites, and that has actually. We never thought that it is actually a way to develop business, but it has turned out to be a way in which Fractal is growing because people are telling the world that, hey, guys should work with Fractal. So and this principle of treating people well on their way out is something that I've seen work in multiple other places. Even clients, when clients ask us to stop working for them for whatever reason, they don't want to work with us anymore, how we treat them and how we transition ourselves out and bring the next whoever they're working with or some other way, or sometimes it's transition to internal team, is a huge trust building measure. And we've seen that it has worked very well for Fractal because of our behavior with them. Even investors, it's great to get investors in, right? When they bring you and give you the big checks. But investors have a life cycle, and then they have to go out and they have to sell their stock. And typically many founders I've seen, especially a lot of the Indian founders, are very painful to deal with during the exit time. They're like, okay, you're going, but I don't care about your exit, etc. No, we don't think like that. We feel like your investors came in, they have a path, they have to exit, and we have to enable their exit. And we've made very smooth exits possible for all of our investors so far. So all those investors are coming back again in different funds. The same people. See, what we realize is that it is just people. In clients, people, investors, these are people. They move around and they spread the word and they come back in different avatars to work with you in different ways. So it's the same people who exited Fractal as an investor are coming back because they are now investors in another fund, and they come back and they want to invest again. So many of our current investors actually were our previous investors in a different fund. And some of them are board members, and it's just a beautiful thing. Understand there are people, understand that there are relationships, and treat them well, good times, and most importantly, bad times. And then that turns out to be a very good advantage for you.
We want to double click on your 7 principles about how to manage with people. But before that, one thing which is coming, you mentioned that any other software company cannot be a analytics company. How is that Genesis different from software engineering thing? Because, to the outside world, both are same, both are computer sciences, computer scientists, software engineer also apply ML models and stuff like that. And analytics people also do that. So what's the difference between Genesis of these two things?
The difference in DNA between a software services company or software company versus a Fractal-like company is the fundamental approach to problem solving. So like I said multiple times already in our conversation, it's about powering decisions. We think of decisions and work backwards from what decision are we making. We work backwards from there to the data, right? Eventually we need data and algorithms to help decision making. But we are always focused on who's the user, what decision is she making, and then work backwards from there to figure out what algorithms to build.
Can you give us an example?
Let's say you have been charged to identify credit card fraud. Now, you can do all kinds of pattern where you can say, hey, I'll do pattern matching. I'm a software company or I'm a algorithms company. I'll go look at the data and figure out all the patterns of what underlying fraud. Yes, it's helpful. But the reality is that fraud is an important thing which is about the time of decision making, right? At the time a card is swiped, within 0.2 seconds, you need to know, you have to declare whether it is a decline or accept the credit card transaction. If it is an application fraud, it has to be, there are various kinds of frauds that happen and they have to be decided. So if you think about what processes are happening at that end of where the rubber hits the road, when the credit card is being swiped, and then work backwards to what algorithms are required. You realize that, for example, you may have a great algorithm, but it takes 30 seconds to compute. It won't work. Sometimes something else may be required. So your way of solving problems changes dramatically when you know who is the decision, who's the user, what decision is she making, and then work backwards from there rather than work forwards from data. That's just one example. But if you go across the board, when you love data and when you are analyzing data for its own sake, and many of the software companies are about, tell me, sir, tell me what system to build, right? Tell me what do you want to look. Tell me what screens do you want. They are thinking of the screens and the software to build rather than what user, what decision, what problem are they solving. So having a very strong problem-solving, decision-making orientation is obvious. Once stated, it's obvious, but it's not culturally something that everybody gets. So that's very important.
So you were a member of the AI task force of the Ministry of Defense. What was the experience like? What did you learn in that experience?
So this was 2018, and the government of India and Ministry of Defense created a task force for AI, and there was 25 people in that task force. It had all the joint chiefs of staff and one level down from the chief of army, chief of navy, chief of air force. Then a few cybersecurity experts were there. There were a few academics from various IITs and so on, professors. And there were 3 people from the industry. One was Mr. Chandra, who's now chair of Tata Sons. And 2 of us. One was Ankit from ideaForge, India's largest drone company, and me. The 3 of us were the industry representatives in that. And Chandra was the chair of the task force overall. So the experience was that it was 2018, so 5-6 years ago. But India had by that time woken up to the reality of how AI is going to play a very important role in India's defense. And you will see that whether it's offense or defense, right, in terms of attack or prevention of attacks or defending yourself, the role of AI is increasing quite dramatically. Even cybersecurity is included because many of the wars are now becoming cybersecurity wars, right? And some of the drones, etc., you seen in Ukraine war also are becoming very critical to the wars. So there was a growing recognition that AI is going to play a very important role, and we have to modernize the Indian defense establishment in such a way that we recognize and incorporate this, and also see how the world is going to do. In 2017, Vladimir Putin made the statement that whoever wins the race for AI is going to control the world. He made that statement, and this was like a year after that. So it was clear that AI is very important, and our goal was to study the impact of what are the rest of the world doing in there, and how can we help the Indian defense establishment to be able to modernize the overall approach towards incorporating AI into everything, into the decisions that they make, strategic, tactical, and operational. In defense, it's very, these are the ways you talk about decisions, which is strategic decisions are, more than, 250 kilometers. In army, for example, there's a 250 kilometers strategic decision. It's 100 kilometers is it's operational, and on the ground it's tactical, whatever. That's how they define the decision making. But eventually there are a whole host of decisions that the army or the navy and the air force are making. And our goal and our report, which is still confidential, the government has not released it, so I'm not at liberty to talk about the report per se. But we were analyzing all of these trends and giving the government, the Ministry of Defense, a path forward for how they could implement, what should they do to keep India's defense forces competitive. For example, India has 2 million, almost 1.5 million people. India is one of the largest armies in the world. And if you see China, what China has done, China has dramatically reduced the size of its army because now it's using more and more technology. So the ratio of tech to human has to decidedly move towards tech. More tech is required. Indian defense was probably much more human than tech. And there was some of that balancing had to happen. So that's the direction which we were working on.
So from that report that you gave to the government, were there any learnings that you yourself learned for the business that you are into? And is there any learning which you would give to a business, young entrepreneur from that strategy?
Nothing I can think of directly. I think it was a very good experience working with 25 different people. I mean, and the learning there is, when you're working with diverse stakeholders, you tend to get better problem solving. So like I was saying about decision making, right? Running a good process, one of the elements of processes is being inclusive of diversity, right? Different people have different views on a topic, and when you're able to channelize that discussion, you can get to better outcomes. So you realize, you think you know everything, and then you realize that, okay, these people who come from a different background, oh my God, they have completely different point of view, and I never thought of it. It opens your mind. So that is one of the learnings from a process like that, because 25 extremely smart people with different backgrounds, if they're coming towards one purpose, which is to help AI, India's defense, leapfrog to the next generation, I think it tells you that diversity really helps in problem solving. It's also more difficult because it's easy to make decisions when everybody thinks the same way. No, there's no argument. But when people think differently, then it's challenging to make decisions, but the quality of decisions can really go up.
So you're also a student of politics. And when you're in a room of 25 smartest folks coming from the different industries, what kind of politics happens? And do you feel कि यार मैं कुछ बोलूँगा और ये अच्छा नहीं हुआ तो लोग क्या सोचेंगे? And then if there are 25 smartest people, everybody has an opinion. And at the end, there will be some people who will get offended because their ideas are not following through.
You can't make any decisions in a group of 25 people. It's just it's impossible. So you have to, you can have conversations. You can get sensitized to a topic. You can use some sense making collectively. So you can all process information at the same time. So those things can happen. But some of the decisions have to be then broken down into smaller groups. I think a functional team is 7 to 10 people. And beyond that, I think smaller teams are good too. But at 7 to 10, you get the best of diversity and still the dynamics of the team are workable. So yes, so you cannot work in a very large team and do anything. So you have to break it down to smaller teams with expertise and diversity of perspectives and yet expertise in that area, right? So that's how you do it. So for example, I had no expertise in cybersecurity back then. So all of the conversations in cybersecurity were handled by a different type of people. But I was the deepest expert on AI as in that group in terms of industry expertise in AI, not just research expertise. So you decide on what area of expertise you can bring to a topic, and then influence the set of people that you're working with, and you learn how to sort of collectively work with this group of people.
Jeff Bezos is one of your people that you learn from, and he has a thing on saying that you have to invent and invest on your customers' behalf. And Fractal, we know, from your talks that it's extremely customer-centric organization. Can you double click on those? People who want to build companies, people who want to create institutions which can last them, how do they become customer-centric?
Yeah, firstly, yes. Jeff Bezos has been an inspiration for me in two things that I really admire about Jeff Bezos. Number one is extreme client centricity or customer centricity. And I think the way Jeff Bezos describes customer centricity is that if you're really, really customer centric, then you must invent and invest on their behalf. Customers don't always know what they want next, but they're wonderfully dissatisfied as well, right? Because you do something, they like it, they take it for granted, they want what is the next best thing. Customers are all going to be asking for better, cheaper, more selection. That's really how the customers are going. They have those needs, but they can't articulate exactly what product might fit their needs. So you have to obviously listen very carefully to what customers are looking for, what they want, and what they may need next. And for that, you have to meet them before they ask for it, right? So you have to invest and invent on their behalf. So you have to invest in R&D so that you can do when the customer wants it, they want it today or yesterday. And you have to have made the decision 3 years back or 5 years back to be ready when they want you to be ready. So that's why R&D is so important to be customer-centric. So this is the best way you can combine R&D with customer centricity. And Fractal also spends roughly 10% of our revenues on inventing and investing on our customers or clients' behalf. We call our customers clients. So on our clients' behalf, we invest so that when the client needs something, because we have done that work 3 years ago and we've been investing for 3 years, we are really ready to serve them today.
Can you give us an example where you went ahead of your job in order to invest or invent on your client's behalf, which paid off you?
So for example, generative AI. Generative AI has taken off dramatically in the last 1 year, especially after ChatGPT, big boost in generative AI. But We have been investing in some of the components of that AI. We bought a conversational AI company in 2021. We started investing in conversational AI well before that. We invested in imaging AI. We built a platform for image detection, now image generation. Because we had done all of these investments in starting from 2018 onwards, by 2023, when ChatGPT took off, it took us very little time to serve everything that the clients are looking for because we have done all the hard work of investing for 5 years before. Yes, we could have started everything in 2023, but then we would be a few months, a few years behind where the clients are looking for. Because we were anticipating and investing on their behalf, we had the accelerators, the products, the services to be able to serve them as tech became better. We could instantly serve them across the board. So that's just one example. But typically, what we want to do is to invest our R&D dollars in a way which is consistent with where the world is going, where our clients would want us. For example, today we are investing in quantum computing in a significant way. And we know that there is no current need for quantum computing. There's no problems to be solved with quantum computing, and it doesn't make sense for any of our clients to use any quantum computing as of right now for any problem solving. But we know that in 2 to 3 years from now, as the quantum tech becomes much more accessible, affordable, better, etc., clients would say, hey, can you do it using quantum computing? And if we were starting in 2025, we would not be able to do it. So because we're starting in 2020, we would be ready by 2025 to be relevant to our clients. So that's the idea, that you anticipate, you deeply listen to your clients, understand what problems they're trying to solve, and invest in the R&D before they even ask you to solve for them. That's the way, at least I've seen. The second thing I like about Jeff Bezos is his long-term orientation, which I think, again, a very interesting thing, which the idea is, most companies, when they think long-term, they're saying 3 years. Right? And if they're really long-term oriented, they think 5 years ahead. So to be able to think 10, 20, 50 years ahead, for example, he's trying to do Blue Origins, which is about, that someday in the next 20, 30 years, we will need to live on a planet that's not exactly called Earth, maybe some other place. And therefore, think really that long term. But that's the idea that I really admire about Jeff Bezos. And in the way I think about Fractal is, how do we set Fractal up for next 100 years? I know I'm going to run Fractal for some time, but not for forever. But Fractal has to have the right structures, culture, and the design in place so that future leaders of Fractal can run Fractal in a way and build this institution for the next 100 years. So what actions can I take today that guarantee the longer term success of Fractal is really how I think about it. And that's really what I've learned in how we are investing for the future or building for the long term from Jeff Bezos.
And when you think about long-term goals, what are some aspects that you actually look? What are things that you're actually doing today at Fractal which can help Fractal, maybe 100 years from now?
So, for example, do we have the right cultural mechanisms to nurture leaders? So today, somebody that we are hiring from campus, 15 years from now, 25 years from now, could be our next CEO. So when you hire someone from campus, are you treating her or him as a future CEO that I need to shape the path for? Or are you thinking of, oh, he's just a novice, he doesn't know anything, just train him for a couple of years? What is your orientation? Are you seeing the future CEO in that recruit that you just made? And that is one example. So if you have a culture where you are naturally able to nurture leaders, over time, that becomes an institution which knows that this will produce the right leaders for Fractal. Right? So that's just one example. Taking a long-term view of clients means that we are very selective on who we serve. We are not maximizing this quarter's revenue or the next quarter's revenue or even the next year's revenue. We are trying to build where we have these long-term client relationships. We're doing $30 to $50 million of business with them. And we have a path to a $15 billion revenue, right? So our thinking is 500 companies, 30 million per year, 15 billion, right? That's the kind of company. So how are we building the relationship? Do we have a very long-term orientation to our clients, right? So it doesn't matter one quarter, ups and downs, issues. We want to serve them in a way that builds these relationships for the next 50 years. That's another example of how we would think about it. R&D, for example, if you want to maximize profitability, you can do it today. Cut R&D expenses, marketing expenses, you can make more profits. But some of these expenses are very important in building this company for the much longer term. R&D or marketing and other kinds of expenses. So how do you build all those engines that Fractal needs to have firing in all cylinders for eventually to Fractal be very successful many, many years from now? You have to do it right now rather than do what's most expedient, what's most easy or most profitable today.
So for example, आपने बताया कि research is one way. How can marketing that you do today can help you after 100 years?
See, it's a reputation, it's a branding that helps you attract talent, it helps you attract clients, it helps you attract all partners, everything else, right? Or investors, everything else. So the idea of marketing is also, I think, while there are some short-term aspects of marketing. For example, I can run a campaign to generate leads. That's very short-term marketing-oriented activities that I can do. But there's a much more longer term about selling the Fractal story and telling the Fractal story and building the narrative around Fractal, which builds the institution, right? Which builds. Why does Harvard get so many applications every year? Because Harvard is known as an institution that helps them in the longer term because they attract high quality talent. To take a Fractal example, we attract something like 315,000 applications every year. Of that, we hire 1,500 people. That's the statistics for last year, right? They're applying to Fractal because Fractal has built a reputation for being a high-quality workplace, great culture, great clients, great problem solving. So they are interested in joining Fractal. And I think to that extent, it's a very important, marketing is very important for building the long-term future.
Got it. So you mentioned cultivating leaders. And Fractal has an amazing model where, the core business is a services business, but it has identified leaders and, enabled them to start a lot of products in the company. How do you identify leaders? How do you look for it? What are some cues that a person gives which makes you believe that he or she is a potential leader?
You're right that we have been able to build a bunch of leaders, not just the product businesses that we have created, which have spun off and have done well, but across the board, there are amazing leaders who have created at Fractal, they're leading large parts of our business. And if they leave Fractal, they're leading, going and running big companies elsewhere as well. So I think eventually the quality of the alumni that you create is a very important determinant of success, because we are not just here to build Fractal for the long term, but if you're able to create leaders who go and build other great companies too, that's good for the world. And we want to think of that. It may be a loss to Fractal, but maybe a gain to the world. So that's fine too. So we do think of building those leaders. Now, the companies, that product companies that we've created, some companies such as Cure.ai have gone off really, really well. But when we're looking for this entrepreneurial, I'm looking for entrepreneurs inside, right? Really, even before we're looking for leaders, we're looking for who have the entrepreneurial zeal. And for an entrepreneur, you have to have a very strong desire to solve some world problem. Right? You have a very, very strong desire, and you should be willing to say that, despite all the challenges and the struggles and everything else, I still have so much passion that I simply cannot live another day without addressing this issue that is taken hold of me, right? So I tell everyone that please don't start an entrepreneurial venture, because it's very odds of succeeding are very low. You have to have extreme high degree of interest and passion to solve a certain problem, and then you should be willing to take all the struggles that come along with it. And even then, odds of success are low. So with that in mind, go into it. And once you go into it, then reduce the risks. Then you do all the kinds of things in which you mitigate some of the risk and you build on what you do. But we are looking for those entrepreneurs within Fractal, and then, unleashing those entrepreneurs inside Fractal and creating startups within Fractal.
And you work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and these are bigger organizations. These have different type of complexities. How do you understand the complexities of these organizations? And how can people who are, trying to sell to these big companies can understand the structure, the complexities?
It's a huge topic of conversation here. I think the summary here is that companies are very complex, companies are very big. And, even as Fractal at 5,000 people, I can see the huge change in complexity that's happened between when we were 20 people to 100 people to 500 people. So with every order of magnitude builds more complexity. And as organizations have become very large, we realize that navigating inside that organization to help them drive success is a skill that we have to learn. Mm-hmm. So any problem that we solve for a client, we know that there are multiple teams within the organization, as well as multiple vendors that they are working with. And therefore, if we have the right internal leverage point, we find the right internal leverage point, we have the maximum amount of credibility and the right mandate and the right people who can drive the success and go and support them in a way to drive that success. That's really what we have to understand. So it's a huge topic, but you have to realize that the basic thing is that it is people complexity dramatically goes up, process complexity goes up, technological complexity goes up as you become handle a large organization. And that's why Fractal specializes in this, because this is exactly what you've learned over the years, how to manage the people complexity of large organizations, the process complexity and the tech complexity, and still drive results. And that's why you got paid big bucks, because it's not an easy thing to do. It is a very hard thing to do. You just can't be a startup, hey, I've got a really interesting mousetrap and I'll solve for you. It's enterprise clients, and these large enterprises at this scale, it's simply not possible to drive results with that. So that is what we have to understand.
You spoke a lot about customer centricity. How do you deal with clients and people while they are exiting? And you have 7 principles in Fractal, which is around how to manage people. Can you double click on those? If someone is building an organization, what are those people fundamentals, principles that they should, incorporate, they should learn from Fractal?
The principles that we have, we call them people principles. There are 7 people principles. We have 4 values, which we just discussed. Values are about right versus higher right. People principles are connected to the values, right, but they're a little bit more prescriptive in terms of how we will treat our people. Think of it as a set of guidelines that we all promise to abide by. Because it's possible to not abide by them and still run a company. But we are saying, okay, here's how we will govern ourselves by abiding by these 7 people principles, how we hire, manage, grow talent. And I would say that our people principles are good and we love them, and this is why we have been successful. But it doesn't have to be something that you have to copy paste. You have to. But what I would urge is to pick your own people principles, but have them and live by them. The thing is that it's easy to have good principles in good times, right? You can be very nice. And as soon as times become bad, you start throwing things at people, right? So principles help you become more consistent and build it for the longer term, and builds a governance mechanism into your own actions. And as organizations become larger, it gives ways in which others can process and know what works here, how to behave in this organization. So what are Fractal's 7 people principles? I'll not give you all of them, but I'll just give you a little sense of that. The number 1 principle is about trust, that we will extend extreme trust to each other, which essentially means that we normally do not micromanage anybody. We assume that everybody is doing the right work. We treat everyone like adults. There are 2 models of the world, right? In which one model is, unless I'm supervising this, he will screw up or she will screw up. Or other one is that more or less people want to do the right thing. We just have to get out of the way. We belong to the second world, right? We want to get out of the way. When people are doing good things, let them do it. If you treat them, trust them, and give them a responsibility, by and large, even at 5 years old, kids can be responsible. But certainly most people we hire are 20 plus years old, and they're very responsible people. But most organizations treat them like kids, and they for many, many years. So idea is to not micromanage them. They can work from anywhere. They can wear anything to income. There's no dress code. There's no expense reimbursement policy. There's no vacation policy. You can take vacation. We have created an environment where people can feel like, look, I'm trusted. I'm not. That is the idea. I'm trusted. I feel responsible. Everybody treats me like I'm a responsible person. So that's trust. Now I've got 6 others, and I don't think we have the time. But trust, transparency, and freedom are the bedrocks of those principles. Transparency in the sense that anyone can ask a question, and we'll give you an honest answer. So we run a weekly town hall. Now 250 town halls have happened since COVID. And 45 minutes every week we answer questions. Anybody can ask a question. They're all on one portal, and then they're upvoted by various people. And the most upvoted questions, and we can...
Anonymous.
All anonymous. So we'll answer all of those questions. All kinds of questions come in, but that's transparency. Freedom is about, being able to move within Fractal to some other organization, or work from anywhere is another aspect of freedom. You can choose your manager. You don't like your manager, you can go and find another manager in the organization. So there are some aspects of freedom, trust, transparency, freedom. And one of the principles we discussed earlier on was about once a Fractalite, always a Fractal. That's our people principle number 7, which is about saying that we will treat everyone like they're forever part of Fractal before, during, after. So they're alumni for Fractal, right? And they can come anytime. We treat them just like any Fractalite, and we treat them well on their way in, during the stay, and their way out, treatment is the same. So those are some of the principles. But the idea is these principles give us a guideline, give us a constitutional way of running Fractal for the long term, which we can easily ignore in order to, let's say, short-term profitability, short-term pressures, or bad economic conditions, and you tend to throw everything out of the window and treat people like badly. And this is what I really dislike about a lot of big companies, global companies, is how quickly they'll turn on their own people. They'll say great talent, and next day they're pink slips and firing. And that's the kind of thing that we don't want to do, which is to take a short-term view of talent. So, and this kind of people principles gives us a framework to behave in the right way in the long term.
So you made a lot of predictions about AI predictions for 2024. But tell us one prediction about future that you are bullish on.
I think overall I'm very optimistic about the world. I think we will. I do feel that's the first time in our history we have an opportunity to eradicate poverty, completely eradicate poverty. Why should this world be a place where you're not guaranteed your next meal? It doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of argument about if you give everybody food. I mean, with noble people won't have the motivation. That's not true. You are not working because you are not. I mean, because you're searching for food or security. All of us have higher order needs that will kick in. I think the world has to move to a place where basic food security is food, water. Basic security, life security is fully guaranteed for every individual on the planet. I'd feel like if at this point of time we can't guarantee it, shame on us as the world. Number one. Number two, I think, again, this is something that people won't agree with me on, but I do think that why should we need, the world is ours. Why are there such strong restrictions on moving from one country to another or one place to another? There's such strong anti-immigrant policies around the world, and I think, again, I don't see that as the right construct for the world. World has to be more open and welcoming than it is today.
What's the most important asset that you own?
The family and the friendships. I think the relationships. That is the most important asset.
And how did you meet the most important person in your life?
I met her on a train.
How?
I was going to Ranchi. She was going to Jamshedpur. This was 23 years back, and we were just sitting in the same compartment.
And how did you turn her in?
Yeah, I had two other colleagues of mine, classmates of mine from undergrad, and they were talking to her, and then I started talking to her, and I was super impressed with her knowledge on a wide range of topics, and then we just hit it off.
Wow. What are certain things apart from Fractal that gives you real peace of happiness?
Meditation. I think I do Vipassana meditation. I think it's meditation is the real solution that we all need in this very busy world, which is full of devices. We are so mindless, right? I mean, we are always on our devices, and some of the roots of unhappiness lie in our ability to not process what's going on. So meditation gives you a space to process what is unprocessed. So I do Vipassana, 11 days of meditation, which is no devices, very limited food, no eye contact with anybody, no verbal, and then 12 to 14 hours of meditation every day. That, and you have no devices, no phones, no books, nothing. So it helps you really process it, and it's like a defragmentation of your hard drive that happens during Vipassana. So I think meditation is that answer.
What are some things that you want your daughter to learn from you?
There are a few. I hope to write a book for her. There's quite a few, but I think in general, learning about human behavior and learning about emotional intelligence, I think those I would definitely think that it takes a while to learn these things, and I would definitely like to teach those to my daughter.
What are certain things that you want to do but you're not getting time to do?
The list is very, very long. Having said that, I will say that by definition, they are not most important, because if they are most important, I would have found time. And so this notion that it's very important to me, but I'm simply not able to find time, it's wrong. It's not about having time. It's about making time. It's about finding time. So by some way or the other, you're already signaling that it's not as important. If it's that important, you'll find a way to do it. So I think I'm already doing all the most important things. If I'm not doing that, then that's shame on me, right? And by some way or the other, I am saying that they're not as important as I at least claimed them to be.
You work with so many businesses. What are some businesses that you fundamentally are fascinated by?
I love understanding every kind of business model out there. So I'm a student of how companies work and how companies make money and how companies invent and other cultural, etc. So any company that gives me better insight into that, I think I get very interested in how they get people to do stuff, and how especially innovation processes. How do companies come up with cool new ideas and then they rapidly bring it to market, test it? So one of the companies I'm very fascinated by that is Apple. The clarity of thought and their prescriptive ability to say that this is the product that a customer wants, and being very clear that this is the right product for the customer, and we'll simplify your life. To have the audacity and the competence and the sort of aesthetic skills to create that, I think hats off. That's really what I really admire about them. And again, it's a hard skill to acquire. I'm not like that in the way I behave, but it's something that I definitely admire and like to learn from.
If you have to break down your success, what do you think? What led to your success? What were those one or two things which made you successful?
I think one is the ability to learn from your mistakes, and the ability to continuously reflect and get better. This need to get better and wanting to get better and hanging in there. Right? You need a lot of optimism. In a lot of optimism, you need to take the hard knocks that life deals with you and just say that, look, I'll get up and try one more time, and maybe try differently. I get smarter this time. I'm not going to make the same mistakes again. I'll keep making mistakes, but hopefully not the same mistakes multiple times. Right? That's the idea of learning from mistakes and then just hanging in there.
When are you publishing your own book?
Let's say 2024 maybe. Let's see.
Really? Is it that?
I hope so.
Best wishes. Thanks a lot for doing this, sir. Really grateful.
Thank you.